I'm John Levy. I know many of you. I'm so very privileged to be the 10th chair of the board of directors of the Legal Services Corporation, and as a lifelong Midwesterner, it's very special for me to be back here in one of the great cities of the American heartland, which was a long-time home to my late father-in-law, to commemorate an important milestone, LSC's 50th anniversary. Today, we will hear remarks from some of Minnesota's most distinguished civic and judicial leaders, including Chief Justice Natalie Hudson, Chief Deputy Attorney General John Keller, Government Affairs and Public Policy Coordinator for the Attorney General's Office, Abdulaziz Mohammed. Senator Klobuchar couldn't be with us today, but has sent a video, and Minnesota Congressman and House Majority Whip Tom Emmer has provided us with special remarks to be read shortly. Our program also features 3 terrific panels. The first, moderated by LSC President Ron Flagg, examines the debt burden of Minnesotans and ways to relieve it. The second, moderated by Justice North's Executive Director Dory Rappaport, explores how paraprofessionals and others can help narrow the justice gap. And the third, moderated by LSC board member Lori Mikva, examines why access to justice is important to business and civic leaders. We gather here today just 2 days before LSC turns 50, because it was on July 25th, 1974, that President Richard M. Nixon signed the law creating the Legal Services Corporation. And today, LSC is the nation's largest source of funding for civil legal assistance for the nation's low-income population. It is a leading innovator in legal technology and pro bono, and it's developing models for partnerships that help this significant population maintain their livelihoods, keep a roof over their heads, and escape domestic violence. During these past 50 years, LSC has created an extraordinary network of providers covering the entire country with 130 grantees, more than 900 offices, and employing over 10,000 lawyers and paraprofessionals. And here in Minnesota, LSC supports 5 such outstanding programs, and last year granted to them over $6 million, which on average was about a quarter of their budgets. Well, today's program is part of LSC's ongoing 50th anniversary outreach effort to continue raising awareness and greater understanding across our country of the importance of access to justice and the gravity of the crisis that exists for low-income Americans, and we are particularly focusing on our country's persistent failure to make equal access to justice in our civil justice system a reality for so many Americans. As LSC's 2022 Justice Gap Study starkly quantifies this failure, and it sums up the dire situation. Low-income Americans do not receive any or enough legal help for 92% of their substantial civil legal problems. Our grantees, unfortunately, must turn away as many eligible individuals as they assist because of a lack of resources. So although we appreciate that for this fiscal year, Congress maintained LSC's funding at $560 million, clearly much, much more is needed to close the nation's justice gap after so many years of underfunding. In 1994, 30 years ago, Congress appropriated $400 million for LSC. Well, you can see our current appropriation has not remotely kept up with inflation, population growth, the after effects of the COVID pandemic, or many other issues confronting our country's low-income population, and that is why our bipartisan board unanimously requested from Congress $1.8 billion for LSC's fiscal year 2025 budget. Such an increase would make a world of difference for LSC and its grantees, and it would help our country more fully live up to a core American value. You know, our founders believed that ensuring equal access to justice was what Thomas Jefferson called the most sacred of duties of a government. George Washington called the firmest pillar of good government. Even in a more fundamental sense, equal access to justice girds the very foundation of our democratic government, the rule of law. As Texas Chief Justice Nathan Heck powerfully observed just 2 weeks ago in his testimony at an extraordinary Senate hearing on the justice gap. I quote him, "Unmet needs for basic civil legal services, the justice gap, direly impact people's lives, court processes and efficiency, the economy and society. I must add, as a steward of judicial office, that the justice gap also threatens the integrity of the rule of law itself, suggesting that it applies not to all and not equally as promised, but only to people of means," unquote. Well, LSC's mission of expanding access to justice, it's not an act of charity, nor an exercise in social engineering. It is an investment in the stability of American democracy and ultimately the rule of law. Well, a prominent Minnesotan, Vice President Walter Mondale, recognized this imperative even before LSC existed, when in 1971 he co-sponsored bipartisan legislation to create a national legal services operation. And I quote him, "If the poor and powerless do not have free access to our legal system, government by law is a failure," he said during the floor debate. And then in 2015, here in Minneapolis at an LSC event, 40 years after the creation of LSC, Vice President Mondale called on us to do more, warning that only with, and I quote him again, "a new commitment to equal access will our country's promise of justice, reflected in our Constitution and the closing words of the Pledge of Allegiance, really be what it should be for all Americans," unquote. But we are nowhere near liberty and justice for all. Instead, we're falling victim to another warning, Judge Learned Hand's famous admonition: if we are to keep our democracy, there must be one commandment: thou shalt not ration justice. But rationing justice is precisely what we're being forced to do. As Nicole Nelson, the CEO of Frontline Justice and former head of Alaska Legal Services, said in her own compelling testimony at the Senate hearing 2 weeks ago, and I quote her, "Legal aid is so vastly underfunded that it is forced to turn away one person for everyone they represent, not because the cases lack merit, and not because they aren't serious consequences at stake, but because of lack of resources. those who have dedicated their lives to doing their work are turning into gatekeepers who have to ration justice. Well, in closing, I want to recall the words of two presidents reflecting on the importance of LSC. The one who ushered it in, Richard Nixon, and the one who is in office today as we mark our 50th anniversary, Joe Biden. Of the LSC Act that he signed on July 25th, 1974, Richard Nixon said, "We have learned that legal assistance for the poor, when properly provided, is one of the most constructive ways to help them help themselves." He said, "We propose simply to protect and preserve a basic right for all Americans." Well, Joe Biden was actually the presiding officer of the United States Senate when it passed the LSC Act on January 31, 1974, and has remained committed to the corporation throughout his long career, appearing at numbers of LSC events, and at LSC Forum 8 years ago, he called LSC a passion of his, extolled the vital services it provides our country, and concluded his remarks with a personal observation: what his mother would say about it. This is what my mother would ask if she were here. What would we do without you? What would we do? Well, as we commemorate LSC's 50th anniversary and look in just a few years to the 250th birthday of the founding of our country, it is absolutely imperative that we move quickly beyond rationing justice, protect the rule of law, and ensure equal access to justice for all Americans. Folks, this crisis is happening on our watch, and it is solvable in our time, and we owe no less to future generations of Americans. Thank you very much.